Thanks for tuning in for this little module on just how to make your dentures look a little bit more lifelike, a little more natural. Thanks to the Mod Institute for including me and also for all their support in learning these things that have really made dentistry fun again for me. And I hope that you guys will just pick up on this and so many other things that they share, and that it'll make your practices more fun and make your patients happier with the dentistry that they're receiving. So enjoy. All right, so you've got your two parts, right? You've got your gum tissue, you got your teeth, and now we got to bond them together. So you're going to see in the video here that I'm just taking a little bit of the tooth colored resin with a dropper and just dropping a little drop into each socket, doing enough to make sure that it's going to feel all the little nooks and crannies. But I got a little grief on these videos for adding a little too much, and it is what it is. But the point here, you'll line up the teeth, put them over the sockets, and put firm pressure on. And when you do that, you're going to see that extra resin exude out. And you're just going to take, at that point, get it pressed nice and tight, take a gloved finger and just wipe across the gum tissue just to get the bulk of the excess away. And then once you've got rid of that, you're going to take and just wipe that all off, and then grab some kind of a brush. I just use like a little, it's like a little paintbrush. These are just throwaway paintbrushes I have that I will either just go dry, or sometimes I'll dip it in a little bit of alcohol and just go across the gingival margin, across that sulcus area, up into the embrasures, just to clean off all the little excess that is not necessary. If you leave too much behind there, you're going to kind of dull the anatomy that you worked on. So this is the same thing, just showing the lower denture. So same thing, I'm just going to take a little dropper, put a little drop in each socket, line the teeth up there, and apply firm pressure just to seal those together and to close off any of that space in between there. So same thing, just wipe away the excess and just being careful to get the brush and clean up any little extra that's left behind. Once you've got this cleaned up and it's looking good and you think you're ready to kind of lock it into place, this is the important part. You're going to take a little curing light, and when you're doing this next part, see how I'm holding this tight together, just to make sure that those teeth don't kind of float up from the hydraulic pressure of that resin that's underneath them. But just holding that really tight together and then grabbing your curing light. This curing light that I use is called the UV Beast. Wally introduced me to that. It's off of Amazon, but it is the best thing I've found. I used to try and use different curing lights and stuff, but when you're curing it, really important to hold it really, really tight together so that they're not moving. Otherwise, you're going to kind of obliterate the occlusion that you worked so hard to design in Exocad. So now you've got those glued together, you've pulled off the bulk of the supports, and then I use this little disc here. It does the best job of anything I've seen to remove the little sharp spots that are left from the supports without gouging into the material. So it does a good job just to take the excess off without ruining your anatomy. But you're going to want to make sure, go around, feel for any of those across the occlusion, underneath on the gingiva, wherever those supports were from the 3D print, and just make sure that you get those all nice and smooth. This next step is easy, it's quick, but it makes a huge difference. It's just taking this little diamond flex disc and going in between the embrasures, and I go down onto the facial a little bit just to create a little bit of separation between the teeth so that it doesn't just look like one solid flat thing of teeth. This is one of those little steps that really, in my opinion, makes a huge difference just in the aesthetics of your cases and making your denture really just look like teeth for your patient. But yeah, just taking a little bit of time, going in, separating those teeth. I go into the back even sometimes, probably not necessary, but really as long as you take some time on those front teeth and just create a little bit of that reality that those are maybe individual teeth and not, one solid piece. These are the things that I think we can do that take just a few minutes that make a huge difference for what your patient's going to be wearing every single day. So you've got everything cleaned up, and you're gonna take, before you move to this next step, take some kind of an alcohol wipe off all the extra dust, and then dry it out really well. But this part here is just giving a little bit extra love, I think, to the denture. You could just polish it up and have it pink and call it good. But it's pretty easy to just take some of these stains. Here I'm just taking a red stain and just kind of creating a little bit of depth to the gingiva so that it's not just a light pink shade, but giving it a little bit more of a natural, look like there's some blood vessels in there, and just like normal gums would look. But just using some of that red, just create those little arches up above where the gingiva is, and spreading that out kind of at an angle to give little striations in the color. And then once you get the red kind of spread out even, next is I'll take this UV Beast again and kind of cure that first layer. And then I'll take some light pink and just go across each of the teeth, across the gingival margin, just create a little bit of a cuff there. And this does a lot to give kind of the 3D effect to the tooth, or to the gums, so that they look a little bit more natural for the patient. And so once you get that spread out evenly across each of the gingival margins, I just take a little thin brush, a thin tipped brush, and just pull that up and away, kind of push it down into the papilla, and then pull it up and away from those margins, and just create some little reflections off of the gum tissue, and so that it's not just a solid pink or a solid red, but giving it some depth of color and just making it look a little bit more natural for the patient. Then I'll go ahead and cure both of these layers before I move on to the next. So this is just the same thing on the lower, just the red first, kind of sped up here just to show you. It really doesn't take very long, but just spreading that red out, keeping it off of the teeth. If you get a little bit up on the teeth, it's not a big deal. Just grab a little alcohol wipe and wipe it off. But spreading that out, and then you'll go back through and add that light pink and just create that depth of color for the gum tissue there. A lot of dentists that I know that I do this will like question me on how I have time to do this. I actually enjoy doing it. I think it's fun. It's actually kind of therapeutic for me, kind of like a little art outlet and creative outlet, but it doesn't take that much time either. I don't think there's too many of us that don't have any time in our day between patients, or an appointment finishes early, or somebody doesn't show up, and you have a little bit of time to do these kinds of things. So this next step is just giving a little bit of character to the teeth. So this is the candy coating technique that Wally Renee teaches, and I found that it works really well. So I'll just take a thin layer of that natural, whatever the tooth colored resin is that you used in this case. So just taking a really thin layer of that, putting it across the facials of all of the teeth, and then don't cure it, and that's where you'll start to add your color. So here I take a little bit of this light brown and just add it up along the cervical third, just a teeny little dot, and then you're just gonna take and kind of brush that down and away from the gingiva, just to give a little bit of warmth to the tooth so that it's not just a solid white. And again, you may have patients that want a solid white, and that's what they want, and that's okay. I think it's knowing the patient and customizing it and individualizing it for them. But just adding this little bit of brown makes a big difference, in my opinion, to make these just look like teeth, because natural teeth do have that depth. This next part's fun. This is just adding some mamelon. So you just take a little bit of a white color stain or paint, and just, on these centrals, I just put like 3 little dots and then kind of brush them up and away from the incisal edge, kind of spread them out a little bit. And then this next step, just to add a little bit of a halo effect, I'll take some blue and place that in between and around those white dots, just to give a little bit of a halo. Then that final, I just take a little white and go right across the incisal edge, and then cure and set that all into place. The candy coating technique, it takes that initial layer, and those new colors you add just kind of soak into that, and then you cure that in. And then I'll take a another thin layer of the tooth colored resin and cover over all of that just to give it kind of to seal it up. And I do that all over the denture. I do it up onto the gum tissue, across the palate, just to kind of seal everything in. And again, taking your little brush and just cleaning out the embrasures so that they don't just get all gummed up with extra resin there and just look like one big monolithic piece of tooth. But yeah, just spreading this all across the palate and getting it everywhere will just give a nice finish to it and seal it off. Curing it with the UV Beast and then getting it ready and moving it over to the curing unit. So just doing more of the same here, just adding a little bit of character to the teeth. You saw I went with that brown first, down along the gingiva, kind of cervical third. And then up along the incisals, just a little bit of white and to create some mamelons and blue to give some translucency and that kind of halo effect to the teeth. Covering it all up with just a tooth colored resin and then curing it, setting all that in place, and then it's ready to go to the curing unit. Thanks for tuning into this video, just showing how you can make your dentures look a little bit more lifelike and natural for your patients. I've found that as I've gotten into 3D printing that dentistry has gotten fun again. I was getting to a point in dentistry where it was just kind of the same thing and boring, and this has changed a lot in my practice and given me more hands-on, behind the scenes, getting things ready for the patients and really being able to customize things for my patients. And it has been fun. And it's kind of therapeutic for me and gives me kind of a creative outlet on dentistry and how I can deliver things differently to my patients. So thanks for tuning in. I also would like to say thanks to Stand Shoes. These shoes, I wear them pretty much every day. If you've never tried them, I would recommend giving them a try. If you're on your feet a lot, if you do a lot of surgery, if you got a big practice and you're moving around a lot, they really do make a big difference just in comfort and in how my body feels at the end of the day.